Well, good morning, Lisbon. Thank you all for being here to help kick off the second day of the OCP Global Summit, or Regional Summit, pardon me, the EMEA Regional Summit. I'm Jeff Omelchuck. I'm Global Executive Director of Infrastructure Masons. We're a professional society of people in the digital infrastructure industry. And what I mean by professional society is our members are people, not companies. It's people like you, the builders of the digital age. So thanks for coming this morning and helping us kick off the track on sustainable and scalable computation, or something like that. And I was interested in kicking off this track today because iMasons just published our first State of the Industry report. We interviewed over 500 people in the digital infrastructure industry, the data center industry, and asked about growth projections, what challenges do they face, what's keeping them up at night. These people were across 50 countries on 6 continents to pull together the intelligence of the people actually working in the industry. And to kind of take a step back, in 2022, iMasons published an industry baseline that said we think there are about 7 million data centers. And of course, what defines a data center is kind of defines that number a little bit. But we're including even small scale data centers like the ones that are at the base of cell phone towers and things like that as a data center. So our forecast in 22 was 7 million data centers consuming about 105 gigawatts of built capacity, consuming 594 terawatt hours of electrical grid power, which is about 2.4% or so of the global energy draw. This was in 2022. And that 594 terawatt hours is broken out in networks, providers, and crypto miners. So this was our projection in 2022, and you know, it's really substantial, and the growth at the time was you know, the industry was forecasted to you know, just really aggressive growth. And then in March of last year, ChatGPT-4 launched and gained, what was it, 10 million users in 3 months or something. The world changed. The growth projections that were amazing, you know, pre that time, have now become pretty terrifying. When we talked to these 500 people for the State of the Industry report, they all said, we're going to build more data centers in the next 2 years than we've ever built in the life of the, you know, in the company. We're going to double or triple data center capacity in the next 5 years. They said that the hyperscalers in particular said they're going to add 38 gigawatts of AI capacity in the next couple of years. 38 gigawatts dedicated only to AI. One of the other interesting things we picked up from some of the, you know, Amazon and others was that their estimate is that only about, so far, about 20% of the compute load that had been in enterprise data centers had moved to the cloud. So there's still 80% growth left in cloud. I mean, a lot of us think that's a mature market. Everything that's going to move has. We're not even close. We're at the early days of cloud adoption. And finally, as I said, some of the biggest portfolios in the world, these are the hyperscalers, Microsoft, Amazon, Apple, Meta, said they're going to double what they've built in the last decade in the next 2 years. That's staggering growth. That's staggering growth. And as we polled these people to understand what are your biggest concerns, these are the growth projections. What are your biggest concerns, though? What keeps you up at night? What are you most worried about? 4 things really rose to the top. The first is power. As you know, many of the power markets around the world are tapping out. There's no more grid power available. This will shape the growth of our industry. I'll say more about this. The second is people. Where are we going to get the people to drive the growth of this industry? The third is perception. That is the community perception of the value of infrastructure, and do we want a data center in our backyard, or our data centers good neighbors, is causing pushback, and that's impacting the growth and the health of the industry. And the fourth is planet. We think the sustainability goals are being compromised in the rush for power, hence the focus of my talk, power at all costs. So I wanted to say more about some of those. As I said, in many leading markets, from Dublin to Amsterdam to Portland, Oregon, where I live, to Phoenix, certainly Northern Virginia, all over the world, power is becoming the limiting factor to growth of infrastructure. And it's changing the dynamic and changing the conversation with communities. It used to be that if you put a data center in an industrial zone, nobody really cared. I mean, it doesn't impact anything. And now communities are having to do the calculus. Do we allocate 100 megawatts to a data center, or do we build a couple 100,000 homes? And what's the best use of the power that's available in our market? That's a dynamic that hasn't existed before. It was just really about getting permitted and building your data center. So this is really changing the focus. Constrained power generation and transmission is beginning to limit growth. And transmission is often as big or a bigger problem than generation, getting the power to where it's needed to run the data center. On the people side, 40% of us are graying out. I actually announced my retirement last year, and I'm still on the path to retirement. But 40% of our industry is graying out is expected to retire in the next, in the next 5 or 10 years, I think. So this brain drain of people with the experience in the industry is really impacting the industry. And iMasons, my organization, is focusing a lot on bringing people into the industry and trying to make people aware of the opportunities in data centers and in digital infrastructure and the need for it on the, how much society needs this asset. But we're concerned about the people aspect. The next one, as I said, is pushback. We're seeing protests in Northern Virginia. We're seeing protests in Dublin. People no longer see data centers as a necessarily good, benign, high-tech neighbor. Data centers are increasingly being built, like in Northern Virginia. We see a lot of very organized pushback as we push into areas that weren't our first choice to build. They're infringing on everything from cultural assets, Civil War battlefields in the US, just kind of important cultural sites, to just changing the fundamental nature of the communities. There's so many data centers, it's growing so fast. These are large industrial-looking facilities that don't fit in a rural environment. That's not why a lot of people move to Northern Virginia. And what iMasons has a project focused on changing the perception of the industry. We call it Data Centers as a Good Neighbor. And one of our lessons, well, I don't want to steal the thunder of a previous slide, is in many cases we actually haven't done the work to integrate ourselves into the community well. And I think as an industry we need to do a better job of that. And then on the planet side, which is really one of the key focuses of this talk, we're really concerned that this growth at all costs mentality is going to compromise our net zero goals. Most of the companies in our sector have pretty aggressive goals for decarbonizing. And in the search for power, the investors and the public and others are to the point in many cases where they're saying, screw renewable energy, we just get us energy of any kind, get us power. And we're really concerned that as this rush for growth expands, that we're leaving our environmental goals behind. So one of the insights we gained as we talked to these people with this State of the Industry report is that most of the sustainability frameworks and the carbon reporting frameworks in the industry, SBTI as an example, expect the company to set a base year carbon emissions level and then decrease your carbon linearly in a downward trajectory to zero, over a period of years to some target year, 2020, 2030, 2040 in some cases. So it's just a downward, trajectory, which, from a planetary perspective and I mean, I get it, that makes sense. But many of the companies, almost really all the companies in our industry, are building so fast that there's simply no way to, there's no technology on the planet that enables us to build data centers at the rate and the time scale we're talking about. We're talking building today. How do you build a carbon neutral data center today, considering full scope embodied carbon? Where do you get carbon negative cement today? There are technologies on the way, but if you need to build a data center today, there's no way to do it. Where do you get the steel? Where do you get carbon neutral servers to populate your data center with today? That's very challenging, and what we've come to the realization is we think the carbon emissions associated with our industry broadly will actually increase rather than go down in the short term. And we think it'll drop dramatically in later years because we can't continue to build at the rate we're building now, or the world will be a data center. So this is a time of unprecedented growth as we build, and carbon emissions from that building, I think, is unavoidable. It will go up before it goes down, which is hard to cope with. This is going to break our reporting to many of the carbon reporting bodies out there. As I said, we're getting pushback in communities all over the world. And one thing we've sort of come to realize is, if we want to be perceived as a good neighbor, well, we in fact need to be a good neighbor in the communities in which we site our data centers. And this hasn't always been the case. And I think we as an industry need to do a better job of integrating with the communities, asking them, what is it that you need from us? And not sort of, I got some land, I'm building my data center, get out of the way. And yes, I'll fund the local Little League team or soccer team. I think we need to do a much better job of integrating with the community, becoming a valuable community player. And this is everything from integrating in the education system to making internet, high-speed broadband internet available in the communities, deliver real value to the communities because of the work we do, whether it's providing district heat to the district heating system, where they exist. So our industry is not as bad as some, let's say, but if we continue to follow the playbook, the community engagement and build out playbook of the oil and gas industry, we're going to end up with a reputation like the oil and gas industry, and we'd very much like to avoid that. One of the solutions that came out of the talk was when we said, okay, the growth is crushing us. We don't know how we're going to do it. We don't know where the power is going to come from. We can't site renewable energy in all the places and support the growth. Carbon emissions associated with our sector are going to increase before they decrease. What's the path forward? What do we, where do we go from here? And one of the solutions that came out was interesting. This is the idea of moving the data centers to the power, whereas traditionally we assumed we could get power, and you site your data center where you can get power, you plant it and run the transmission lines to it and create a substation and build. And we think at the scale that people would be building the AI data centers in the very near future, this notion of build them where you can get the power, I think will continue to really drive the growth of the sector. And we think what this will end up looking like is the development of what we're calling clean energy zones. These are gigawatt scale developments, city-sized developments of data centers built cooperatively with hyperscalers, leading colos. So you'll see and we see this in some communities already. Quincy, Washington, not too far from where I'm based. You have up and down the Columbia Gorge, very close to my home in Portland. You'll see Amazon and Meta and Microsoft data centers all next to each other. But we think this will begin to be one of the development scenarios for the hyperscalers. And they already build on hundreds of megawatts scale. So we're talking about these communities being kind of in the middle of nowhere with 5 or 10 gigawatts of capacity, whether they're powered by hydrogen and renewable, built off renewable energy, or by 2030 we're going to have SMRs, and we think there'll be SMR-powered small modular nuclear reactors in the middle of kind of remote areas. You're not going to want to put SMRs in an urban area. We think the community pushback will be substantial, but I think you'll see massive data center developments in the middle of nowhere, which is easy to do in the U.S. There's a lot of nowhere, with 5 or 6 SMRs in a row providing power to the community that's effectively off-grid. And of course, if you build infrastructure at that scale, you're going to need a city. I mean, you need to support thousands and thousands of workers during construction phase. As it gets built out, you're going to need to support hundreds of thousands of workers with restaurants and schools and housing and everything it takes to make a city. So this is kind of our prediction that this is one direction the industry is going to go. I think this also won't lessen some of the really innovative edge approaches we've seen and been seeing, and we think they're not incompatible. We'll continue to see edge developments. Maybe a little rack of servers in every Starbucks to help heat or every Safeway or every grocery store or something to help provide heat, or apartment block. I think that'll also happen. The compute loads will be quite different. You'll see large language model learning in remote locations, powered by SMRs, and we'll see the inference engines that actually deliver the AI content locally, and we think in smaller and smaller chunks to get it close to the eyes, and to make better use of the heat and availability of power that you can't get in really large chunks other places. We see some really nice innovations of companies now making business of monetizing, putting small bits of compute in, like I said, grocery stores or apartment blocks, enabling that. If you're using electricity to heat the building already, why not use the electricity to power a mining rig, and then use the heat from the mining rig to heat the building? And so the mining is effectively free. We see a lot of just innovation like that at the small end of the compute, as opposed to these clean energy zones that'll be mega hyper campuses. So I was asked to lead this, open this track today, really in recognition of the collaboration that we're developing between Infrastructure Masons, my organization, and OCP. OCP's buzzword, a phrase here, is scaling innovation through collaboration. And through a collaboration with OCP, iMasons is increasing the focus and contributing the focus to the infrastructure that runs all the hardware that OCP is focused on primarily. And we're closely partnered with the data center sustainability track of OCP. Turns out that there's a competing presentation happening right now on the second project. We've launched a specific project with OCP Sustainability Committee to develop a way to communicate embodied carbon more quickly and accurately through the supply chain. So we have ways, we're developing a label system that will go on all primary pieces of capital equipment, whether it's a server or a chiller or a genset or a UPS that'll begin to provide a window into the embodied carbon in that device to make it more easy to roll carbon up to say what's the embodied carbon in my data center. Sometimes right now that information is very hard to get. We were launching a project, OCP was launching a project, we decided to collaborate and do it together. So I think that's something you'll see more and more traction to make it easier to communicate embodied carbon. So my call to action is simply to get involved. We would love to have your participation. There's an active OCP project to work on this labeling project, and we're launching more. If you'd like to get involved, please do. If you'd like to get the iMasons State of the Industry Report, download it from iMasons.org. It's free. I think you have to put in your email address, to download it too. But we'd encourage you to read it. It's easy to digest read on kind of the future of the digital infrastructure data center industry. So with that, I'll wrap it. Thank you to OCP for having us, for the collaboration with iMasons. We look forward to collaborating and moving forward. Thank you to all of you for showing up at this opening session at 8:30 in the morning. So thank you.